All right, so now as I transition to a little bit of the recommendations around instructional practices, this is, these recommendations come from a national panel that was organized a couple of years ago. I served on this panel along with a number of other researchers at various universities across the country, as well as teacher specialists and curriculum support specialists who were really had years and decades of experience working with English learners and working with school districts. And this was really a labor of love, because what this report was and what this panel was we got together and we looked at all of the most rigorous studies that had evaluated instructional approaches, so different than the study I just described. These are studies that were conducted in classrooms and schools and that looked at particular instructional approaches and compared them to other instructional approaches or to sort of what we call business as usual. So they took a particular kind of intervention that sounded like it should be promising for English learners. They tried it out and they compared their results on students' outcomes to what other schools or other classrooms were doing. And over the course of a number of years, we looked at all of that research. We came together and we had many sort of discussions and debates about what the research was telling us, and we synthesized them into 4 key recommendations. So today, I'm going to give you just really a preview of what's in this report and a preview of, as well as some additional resources that you can learn more. Before I get into the recommendations themselves, I want to say a little bit about literacy development, English literacy development for English learner students, and partly as a way of context to understand the recommendations. So many of you may know a lot about this, and many of you, so this may be a refresher or just a reminder. For others, this may be a little bit newer or a little bit new way to think about the question of literacy development for English learner students. So if we start with a big question like what is reading, there's lots of different ways to answer this question. There are, of course, lower order skills that are involved in reading. So in order to be able to read a word like high or speed, you're going to have to break that word down into sounds. You're going to have to learn that high is in a family of words with psi and thigh, where the letters make the same sounds. And you're going to have to not just learn to decode these words, but you have to learn to decode them pretty automatically, so that by 5th grade, for instance, students should be able to read about 115 words correct per minute. Of course, reading means much more than that. It's much more than just decoding words. It means using cognitive strategies to figure out the meaning of what's going on. It means having interest and motivation in what you're reading. It means using your understanding of language and your relevant background knowledge to make sense of the information in a text, as well as having a wide enough and deep enough vocabulary to really make sense of what's going on here. So if we look at this example of an article about high-speed trains, and we see this word service, we look it up and we see, well, there are 14 different meanings of the word service. So knowing this word service well means not just knowing one meaning of it, but knowing multiple meanings of it and how the particular meaning used here is appropriate. So those skills break down into 2 big and different problem spaces. So the first problem space are the skills that go into basic reading skills or code. So these are concepts about print, the ability to hear and work with spoken sounds, alphabetic knowledge, word reading and spelling, and fluency. So these are pretty commonly known by many elementary school teachers. The other big problem space is around knowledge and meaning, so concepts about the world, the ability to understand complex ideas, and vocabulary. Both of these go into what we call literacy, or reading and writing skills, built on a foundation of listening and speaking skills. The reason this is important for English learners is because these skills, these code-based skills, English learners must learn these skills, just as all readers need to learn these skills, and some may struggle. But on average, they don't struggle any more than monolinguals do. So we have quite a bit of evidence now that English learners don't struggle with sounding out words or becoming fluent readers as much. Some of them struggle, but no more often do they struggle than native English speakers. On the other hand, knowledge and meaning, many English learners will struggle with this problem space when they're working in English, at least. That on average, many English learners have less sophisticated English vocabularies than native English speakers, and they may have fewer sort of relevant pieces of background knowledge and experience to bring to bear on the reading challenge. The other piece to keep in mind, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, is that reading changes over time, that reading a simple text in first grade about a train trip is different than reading a more sophisticated paragraph about a text in fifth grade. And then by high school, reading a complex social studies text about economic and governmental forces and how they have an impact on the American Railroad is quite different. That texts become more sophisticated in the ideas that they include, but they also become much more sophisticated in the language demands that they require. So helping an English learner navigate the basic English demands of a first grade text is going to be quite different than helping an English learner navigate the more sophisticated and academic demands in high school.